It was one of those nights where nothing seemed out of the ordinary, at least not for me. I had a long week, and with the weekend finally here, I decided to unwind. A quiet night, some drinks, maybe a little fun, nothing serious. So I figured why not call a girl over? A quick search on my phone and I was all set. I wasn't looking for anything too deep, just someone to keep me company for the night. Someone from a service I'd used before. Nothing personal, just business. I've been feeling a little lonely lately, and a bit of company was all I needed. I sent a message, got a quick reply, and before long we'd set up the details. She'd be over in an hour, perfect timing. I took a quick shower, changed into something comfortable, and waited for her arrival. As I poured myself a drink, I couldn't help but feel a rush of anticipation. It was going to be a simple night or so, I thought. But then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting her just yet, but maybe she had arrived early. I glanced at the clock. It was right on time. I opened the door, ready to greet her with a smile, but as the door swung open, I froze. Standing there in front of me was not the woman I had been texting. No, it was someone else entirely. Someone I didn't expect, someone I didn't recognize right away. It was Mrs. Henderson, my best friend's mom. I blinked twice, making sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. What was she doing here? Hey, Mrs. Henderson, I stammered, still in disbelief. What are you doing here? She smiled a friendly smile that seemed normal at first glance, but the situation was anything but normal. Her presence in my doorway felt surreal. Hello, Michael. She said, her voice calm and composed, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite place. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to see if you needed anything. My mind raced. I couldn't understand what was happening. My heart started to pound in my chest as I tried to process what had just unfolded. Mrs. Henderson wasn't just any woman. She was Tom's mom, the same Tom I'd known since childhood, my closest friend. But this was not the visit I had ever imagined when I thought about his family. I was still standing in the doorway, unsure of how to react. The plan I had so carefully set up was suddenly falling apart. The evening I had anticipated wasn't going to go as planned. But what could I do? I couldn't just send her away, could I? Uh, I wasn't expecting... Well, I wasn't expecting you, I managed to say, fumbling for words. I thought you were someone else. She raised an eyebrow. Someone else who... I could feel the awkwardness mounting between us. I couldn't just blurt out that I had been expecting someone from a service, someone who was supposed to be coming over for the night. That would make the situation even worse than it already was. I had to think fast. Never mind, I said, forcing a smile. It's just been a long day. Would you like to come in for a moment? I didn't expect company, but I guess we could talk for a bit. Mrs. Henderson looked at me for a moment, her expression unreadable, then she nodded, stepping past me into the apartment without hesitation. Thank you, Michael. It's nice to see you again, she said, her tone polite, but with an underlying warmth that felt oddly comforting. I closed the door behind her, still in a daze, unsure of how to proceed. As she stepped into the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. I offered her a seat, trying to remain calm despite the unexpected turn of events. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't let it show, not yet anyway. Would you like something to drink? I asked, trying to salvage some sense of normalcy. I can make coffee, or I've got some wine if you prefer. Mrs. Henderson shook her head gently, sitting down on the couch. No, thank you. I won't stay long. I just wanted to check in on you. It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk, hasn't it? I nodded, still trying to make sense of the situation. I wasn't prepared for this. This was not how I envisioned my night going. But there she was, sitting on my couch, making casual conversation as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. For the next few minutes, we exchanged small talk. I tried to focus on her words, but my mind kept drifting back to the fact that I had been expecting someone else, someone entirely different. The thought kept nagging at me, but I couldn't say anything about it. It was too awkward, too strange. I was on edge, and the air between us felt thick with tension. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her eyes locking with mine. The casual tone in her voice shifted, becoming more serious. You know, Michael, she said softly, I've been meaning to ask you something. I raised an eyebrow, curious despite myself. What could she possibly want to ask me? What's on your mind? I asked cautiously, unsure of what direction this conversation was headed. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, her voice a little lower than before. I know you and Tom are close, but I also know that sometimes things can get a little complicated between friends. Have you ever felt like maybe you were in over your head? I blinked, taken aback by her sudden change in tone. What do you mean? I asked, genuinely confused. Mrs. Henderson smiled faintly, a knowing look in her eyes. I just get the feeling that you're not being entirely honest with me, Michael. You're hiding something, and I think it's time you tell me what it is. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was not the conversation I had expected to be having tonight. The conversation that had started with small talk shifted unexpectedly. Mrs. Henderson's words lingered in the air like a subtle warning, and I felt the tension building between us, even though we were just sitting on the couch sipping our drinks. I wasn't sure how to respond to her question. What did she mean by hiding something? I didn't have time to figure it out before she continued speaking, her tone more serious now, and it made my chest tighten. Michael, she said, her voice quiet and measured. I'm not here to judge you. I need you to understand something. What we talk about here tonight, it stays between us, understand? Her eyes locked with mine, and I nodded instinctively. There was something about her gaze, something that made me feel like I couldn't look away, like I was being drawn into something deeper. I don't want anyone to know what I do, she added, her voice almost a whisper. It's not something I'm proud of, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do, right? I was caught off guard. What was she talking about? It seemed so cryptic, but I could tell she wasn't just speaking about the normal things people do. There was a weight behind her words, a burden she was carrying that she clearly didn't want others to see. I swallowed hard, unsure of how to proceed. I don't know what you mean, but you don't have to worry. I won't tell anyone. She nodded, her lips curling into a small, appreciative smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. The room felt quiet suddenly, as if the weight of her confession had changed the air between us. I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears, and I didn't know how to break the silence. Mrs. Henderson wasn't acting like herself. There was a certain vulnerability to her now that I hadn't seen before. She wasn't just Tom's mom, she was someone with her own struggles, her own story. After a long moment, she leaned back on the couch, her expression softening a little. I guess I just needed to say it out loud. I don't talk to anyone about this, not even Tom. He doesn't know about the things I've done. Her voice was barely audible, but I could feel the weight of her words in my chest. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to ask what she was talking about, to push for more details, but another part of me knew that this was her story to share, and it wasn't for me to pry into. Instead, I just sat there in silence for a moment, unsure of what to say next. The awkwardness between us had faded a little, replaced by something else, a kind of quiet understanding. Do you ever feel like you're trapped in a situation you can't escape from? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, unsure of what she was really asking. I'm not sure what you mean. She looked at me with a faint, sad smile. I don't think you do, but you will eventually. It's inevitable. I wanted to ask her more to understand her better, but the words didn't come. Instead, I found myself caught in her gaze once again, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air between us. After what felt like an eternity, she changed the subject. Tell me something, Michael. What's been going on in your life lately? I know we don't talk much, but I can't help but wonder how you're doing. I hesitated. It felt strange to talk to her like this, but the way she looked at me, the way her eyes softened as she listened, it made me want to open up, even though I didn't know why. It's been a little weird, I said, trying to sound casual. I've just been going through some stuff, I guess. Nothing too serious, just the usual. I shrugged, not wanting to get into the details. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. Life does have a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? You can't always control what happens. Sometimes you just have to roll with it. I wasn't sure why, but her words hit me harder than I expected. Maybe it was the way she said them, like she was speaking from experience. For a moment, we just sat there, the conversation flowing easily between us, despite how strange it all felt. There was something calming about being around Mrs. Henderson, something that made me feel like I could forget about the tension and the confusion that had built up earlier. We talked about everything and nothing at the same time, about the things we liked about the world outside, about life's little mysteries. The more we spoke, the more I realized how much we had in common. It was a side of her I had never seen before, a side that didn't belong to Tom's mom, but to a person just like me with dreams and fears and a history that no one else knew. I wasn't sure how much time had passed, but by the time I looked at the clock, it was already late. I didn't want the evening to end, though, not yet. So I said a little hesitant, "Do you want to keep talking?" I mean, I know it's late, but if you're up for it, I don't know. I'm enjoying this. She smiled softly. I am too. It's been a long time since I've had a real conversation like this. It feels nice to talk to someone who's not judging me or expecting anything from me. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't want her to feel like she needed to explain herself. I just wanted to be there for her like she had been there for me. And so we spent the rest of the evening in quiet conversation talking about everything and nothing. For a moment, all the weirdness and the confusion faded, and I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. As the night wore on, I realized that the unexpected turn of events had brought us closer than I could have ever imagined. Mrs. Henderson wasn't just my best friend's mom anymore. She was someone I had connected with on a deeper level, someone who, in a way, had become more than just a guest in my home. As the night came to a close, she stood up to leave, her posture still graceful, despite the weight of the conversation. "Thanks for tonight, Michael," she said with a smile. "It was nice. I'll never forget it." Anytime I replied, feeling a strange warmth spread through me. As she walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us, but what exactly I wasn't sure. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, constantly replaying everything that had happened with Mrs. Henderson. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over again. How did this happen? Why did I feel such a strange pull toward her? And why had she chosen to open up to me like that? It wasn't just the conversation. It wasn't even the fact that she had shared something personal, something so intimate with me. It was the way she looked at me, the way her eyes seemed to see right through me. The connection between us felt undeniable, even if I couldn't fully explain it. I tossed and turned in bed, the silence of the house amplifying my confusion. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, heard her voice, felt the warmth of the night we'd shared. But it wasn't just the comfort of the evening that haunted me, it was the feeling that there was something deeper, something unspoken between us. But why was I feeling like this? She was Tom's mom, she was off limits. And yet the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she was different. She wasn't just Tom's mom. She was someone who had her own life, her own struggles, her own desires. And somehow, in that quiet room, she had shared a part of herself with me that no one else had ever seen. I had to see her again. I needed to understand what was going on inside me, what was really happening between us. And there was no better time than now. The next day, after a restless night, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Tom was going out with some friends, and I knew he wouldn't be home for hours. This was my chance. If I didn't take it, I might never know the answers to the questions swirling around in my mind. I grabbed my jacket, checked the time, and left the house without a second thought. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say, but I had to see her. I had to talk to her to figure out what had happened between us the night before. There was no turning back now. As I drove toward her place, the knots in my stomach only tightened. What if I was reading things wrong? What if she didn't feel the same way? What if I made things awkward, ruined everything? But no matter how many questions I asked myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something that needed to be addressed. When I arrived at her house, I sat in the car for a moment, staring at her front door. I felt nervous, uncertain, and yet there was a part of me that knew this was the right thing to do. I had to confront my feelings, even if it was uncomfortable. Finally, I got out of the car and walked up to the door, my steps heavy with anticipation. I knocked once, then twice before the door creaked open. There she was, standing in front of me, looking just as stunning as the night before, though there was a hint of surprise in her expression when she saw me. "Michael," she said softly, her voice almost as hesitant as mine felt. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed hard, unsure of how to begin. I needed to talk to you about last night." She looked at me for a moment, as if contemplating whether to invite me in. After what felt like an eternity, she stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Come in," she said, her voice warm but cautious. "I wasn't expecting a visit, but I suppose we can talk." I walked in, my mind spinning. She led me into the living room and we both sat down on the couch. There was a palpable tension in the air, something that hadn't been there the night before. It was as if we were both unsure of where things stood between us now. I just... I don't know how to feel about last night, I said, my voice slightly trembling. Everything happened so quickly and it felt different. It felt real, and I don't know if I'm just overthinking things or if you felt the same way. She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant as though she was considering how much she wanted to reveal. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but layered with emotion. "Michael, I can't pretend that what happened last night wasn't important," she said slowly. "But you need to understand something. I've lived a long life and I've made choices that I regret. I've made mistakes that have shaped who I am today, and I don't want to drag anyone into that." I leaned forward slightly, my heart pounding in my chest. "But I'm not like everyone else. I don't want to judge you, Ms. Henderson. I want to understand you, and last night it felt like we connected. It felt like you were opening up to me, sharing something real." Her eyes softened as she looked at me. "It's not that simple, Michael. I've lived through things you wouldn't understand, things I'm not proud of, and I don't want anyone to think I'm looking for something more because I'm not. But when we talked last night, it felt different. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a long time. I could sense her vulnerability now much more clearly than before. It wasn't just about her job or the choices she had made. It was about the wall she had built around herself, the wall she had let me see through, even just for a moment. "I don't want to make things more complicated than they already are," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But the truth is, I don't know how to move forward either." I could hear the unspoken words hanging between us. The hesitation, the fear, but there was also something else, something that felt like an opening a crack in the wall she had built. "Maybe we don't need to figure it all out right now," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Maybe we just need to take it one step at a time." She nodded slowly, her gaze not leaving mine. One step at a time. And for a moment, everything felt right. There was no pressure, no rush to define what was happening between us. We were two people who had shared something real, something honest, and that was enough for now. The sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room. I woke up slowly, disoriented at first, trying to piece together the events of the night before. The warmth of the bed was comforting, but there was an underlying sense of tension that I couldn't shake. As I turned over, I saw her lying beside me. Her features softened in sleep, her hair slightly tousled. For a moment, it felt surreal, like everything had shifted in the span of one night. I couldn't help but smile, though I was still unsure of what had just transpired between us. But as the memory came rushing back, I felt a knot form in my stomach. This wasn't just a one-time thing. What had happened between us had meant something, at least to me. But would she feel the same? I was careful not to disturb her as I sat up, running a hand through my hair. I couldn't believe that I was in this situation. How had we gone from that conversation, that deep connection, to this? But more than that, I needed to know what she thought, what she felt. She stirred beside me, then slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, we just looked at each other, both silent. It was as though the world had stopped for a brief second, and in that stillness, we both seemed to understand that this was a turning point. She sat up too, her expression unreadable. "Michael," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion last night. "I don't know how to explain it, but I've never felt so understood, and I don't want you to think that this was just some kind of mistake." I swallowed hard, feeling a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. "I don't think it was a mistake," I replied, my voice steady. "But I need to know where we go from here. I don't want things to get awkward between us." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. "I'm scared, Michael," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been through so much in my life, and I've built walls around myself. I never wanted to feel vulnerable again, but last night was different, and I'm scared that what I'm feeling is just a momentary lapse." I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, something she rarely showed anyone, let alone me. It made my heart ache. She wasn't just a strong, independent woman. She was someone who had been through her own battles, and now after all these years, she was finally allowing herself to feel something again. I reached out gently, touching her arm. You don't have to be scared, I said softly. I'm not going anywhere. But I need you to be honest with me too. What are we doing here? Because I can't keep pretending that what happened last night didn't mean anything. Her gaze met mine, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I've been in relationships where I gave too much of myself, and in the end, it left me empty. But with you, Michael, it's different. I don't know if I'm ready to dive into something serious, but I can't deny the connection we have, and I need you to understand that. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding. I understand and I feel the same way, but I don't want to rush into anything either. We've both been through a lot, and I don't want to make things harder than they already are. She smiled faintly, a touch of sadness in her expression. I don't want to make things harder either, Michael, but I can't pretend that I'm not feeling something for you. It's just, I don't know how to deal with it. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was also something more, a sense of clarity, a realization that we had both stepped into uncharted territory. Neither of us had expected this, but we couldn't deny the pull between us. I took a deep breath, then reached over to take her hand. We'll figure it out, I said, my voice firm yet gentle. One step at a time. She squeezed my hand, her eyes locking onto mine. One step at a time, she repeated softly. We sat there for a moment, just holding hands as if the world outside didn't matter. There were no words left to say. We both knew that we couldn't go back to how things were before. The door had been opened, and there was no shutting it again. But there was also something comforting in the uncertainty. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know where this would lead. But for the first time in a long time, neither of us felt alone, and that in itself was enough. She slowly stood up from the bed and reached for her robe, her movements graceful and deliberate. I think we both need some time to think about what happened, she said quietly. But I don't want you to feel like this was a mistake. It wasn't. I just need to understand what it means. I nodded, understanding her need for space. I get it. We don't have to figure everything out right now. As she walked toward the door, she paused and looked back at me, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Thank you for being patient with me. I smiled back, though my heart still raced. I'm not going anywhere, and I won't rush you. We'll figure this out together. She nodded, then left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But as I sat there, I realized that maybe this was just the beginning of something new. Something worth waiting for. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. The days following that morning felt like they were suspended in time. Each moment I spent with her seemed to stretch out longer, like we were both savoring the newfound connection, yet cautious of what it meant. There was something unspoken between us, an understanding that we were both navigating unfamiliar waters. But the more time I spent with her, the clearer it became that I didn't want to turn back. I couldn't deny the way I felt. Every time we were together, there was an undeniable spark, something more than just physical attraction. It was like we were two pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place after all these years. But even though it felt right, I knew we needed to take our time. We both had baggage, and rushing into something wasn't the answer. I decided to give her the space she needed, even though it wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to pick up the phone and tell her how much I missed her, but I knew I had to let things unfold naturally. We had already shared so much, but there was still so much left unsaid, and I didn't want to rush any of it. One afternoon, I found myself walking down the street, my mind filled with thoughts of her. It had been a few days since we had talked, and though I respected her need for space, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence between us. I needed to know if she was still thinking about me, if she felt the same way I did. I had been hesitant to visit her again, unsure if it was too soon, but today something inside me pushed me to act. My heart was racing as I walked to her place, each step bringing me closer to the unknown. I wasn't sure what I would say, but I knew I couldn't keep waiting. When I arrived at her door, I hesitated for a moment. Should I knock, or should I wait for her to reach out to me? The uncertainty was eating at me, but I took a deep breath and knocked. A few moments later, the door opened, and there she was standing before me. Her face softened when she saw me, and I couldn't help but smile. There was something comforting about her presence, something that made everything feel right again. Michael, she said, her voice filled with surprise but also warmth. What are you doing here? I couldn't stop thinking about you. I admitted, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I just wanted to see you. I didn't want to let time slip by without knowing where we stand. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. I'm glad you came. I've been thinking about you too, she said softly. I walked in the air between us, charged with unspoken words. There was a sense of tension, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like anticipation, like we were both waiting for something, waiting for the moment when we could finally express what we were feeling. We sat down on the couch, the distance between us seeming to disappear with each passing second. There was no rush, no pressure, just the two of us, silently acknowledging the connection that had formed between us. I've been thinking, she began, her voice trembling slightly, and I know we're both scared. But I don't want to ignore what's happening here. I don't want to let fear keep me from something that feels real. I reached out, taking her hand in mine. I feel the same way, but I also know that we don't have to rush into anything. We can take our time, figure things out as we go. We have all the time in the world. She smiled, her eyes softening. You're right, we don't have to rush, but I don't want to hide what I'm feeling anymore. I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I don't want to pretend that it's not happening. I squeezed her hand, my heart swelling with emotion. Neither do I. We may not have all the answers right now, but I know one thing for sure: I care about you, and I want to see where this goes. There was a long silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was a silence filled with understanding, with the weight of everything we had shared so far. And for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. I think we've both been through a lot, she said quietly, and maybe that's why this feels so intense. But I don't want to run from it anymore. I leaned in slightly, my voice gentle. Neither do I. Let's just take it one step at a time. She nodded, her eyes searching mine as if looking for reassurance. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, but there was also a strength, a quiet resolve. She wasn't the same person I had met all those months ago, and neither was I. I think that's all we can do, she said softly. One step at a time. We sat there for a moment longer, just holding hands, each of us absorbing the weight of the words we had shared. There were no grand declarations, no promises of forever, just the understanding that something real had begun between us, and we were both willing to see where it led. As I left her place that afternoon, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew that whatever came next, I wouldn't be facing it alone. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. This story is a compelling exploration of unexpected connections, vulnerability, and the complexities of human relationships. As a reader, I found myself drawn into the protagonist's internal struggle, navigating the tension between his initial intentions and the surprising arrival of Mrs. Henderson. The narrative skillfully captures the awkwardness, curiosity, and gradual deepening of their interaction, transforming a seemingly ordinary night into a profound moment of mutual understanding. What resonates most is the story's focus on emotional authenticity. Both characters reveal layers of their past fears and desires, creating a bond that feels genuine yet fraught with uncertainty. The pacing allows readers to feel the weight of each moment, from hesitant small talk to the raw confessions that shift their dynamic. The repeated motif of one step at a time beautifully underscores the theme of patience and the courage to embrace the unknown in relationships. However, the story also raises thought-provoking questions about boundaries and societal norms, particularly given the age and relational dynamics between the characters. It challenges readers to consider how connections can transcend conventional roles while acknowledging the complications they bring. Overall, this narrative is a poignant reminder that meaningful relationships often emerge unexpectedly, leaving us to grapple with both their beauty and their challenges. It's a story that lingers, inviting reflection on what it means to truly see and be seen by another person.